an illegal, unconstitutional effort to surveil the Republican candidate for president. Let's understand this, say, in comparison to Watergate. The Obama administration, with the acquiescence of the Clintons, used the authority and the power of the state based on a totally fabricated memo paid first for by a Republican, I'm sad to say, then paid for by Hillary and the Democratic National Committee, and then augmented, but with our tax dollars, by the FBI, as the rationale for FISA court warrants to spy on Donald Trump and his closest associates, including yours truly. I'm sorry, 6 guys who are private citizens breaking into the Watergate and never placing a bug that works pales in comparison to that abuse of power. Where's the screaming about constitutional crisis? Where is the screaming about this outrageous abuse of power? Maybe some of you have seen Adam Schiff on television. This guy is the most odious, vile, sweaty demagogue I've ever seen. I watched him with Tucker Carlson look into the camera and say, as a member of the committee, I've seen evidence of Russian collusion. Really, Congressman? Produce it. Let's see it. Ladies and gentlemen, if it's Schiff, flush it. We are, after we went through the Electoral College, then they called for a recount. We needed a recount in Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania. Now what's interesting is, I wrote a piece for The Hill newspaper in which I expressed a concern that computerized voting machines are easily hacked and manipulated. These are really simple computer devices, and the truth is, there's a $15 device you can get at Best Buy. You used to be able to get it at Radio Shack. I don't think they're around anymore. And you can alter the results in these machines. And the machines, in most cases, are centrally connected to a server in the city or the county where they're in operation. And it is not impossible to manipulate them. I was immediately attacked by the Clinton campaign because I was undermining the integrity of the election. It was outrageous that I would say that these machines could be corrupted. Yet when Hillary Clinton filed her request for a recount in Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, first you file general objections, and then the law requires you to file more detailed objections. Her detailed objection? Well, these computerized voting machines can easily be permeated and hacked. What happened in her recount? You know what we learned? Donald Trump won those states bigger than we had originally thought. So the Electoral College gambit and the recount gambit failed. That is what led them to the claim of Russian collusion. It's a fairy tale. It's a fraud. It's a canard. Oh, Donald Trump Jr. met with a Russian lawyer. Yes, and she was in the country without a visa. Why would the Obama administration let her into the country illegally? And what transpired at that meeting that violated the law? She produced nothing. It's not against the law to meet with a Russian citizen. We have no evidence that she was working for the government. We're not even sure what her agenda was. Can you say set up? Because that's what it looks like to me. No, it is not a violation of campaign finance law. Anybody who writes that does not understand the law. We still have no evidence of a Russian effort to coordinate to affect the outcome of this election. It's an excuse. And now it's clear to me that Robert Mueller, the special counsel, who was appointed despite the fact that there was no definable crime for prosecution, has given up on finding Russian collusion, and he's back to the president's termination of the corrupt FBI director, Mr. Comey, and the termination of General Mike Flynn, who I think is not only a great patriot, but was unfairly and wrongly terminated. What they seek to do is to euchre the president into some obstruction charge, obstruction of justice, or perjury, when in fact, as Alan Dershowitz, the liberal Democratic lawyer, has argued repeatedly, the president has the authority to fire both of them. This is what Mr. Mueller seeks to cook up. Now, I am not one who believes that the president should fire Mueller. It's not that there is not legitimate cause to fire him. There most definitely is. The president should first fire Rod Rosenstein, the Assistant Attorney General, who appointed Comey. Appointed Mueller. The fact that Mueller gave him for his first job in public service constitutes a meaningful conflict. He has violated the law and the regulations, and he should be terminated. Then the president should order Jeff Sessions, if he can wake him up, to appoint a prosecutor in the matter of Uranium One. Uranium One, ladies and gentlemen, is the largest multi-million-dollar treasonous crime in American history. We know the Russian state was bribing people in the United States to gain approval for a company controlled by the Russian energy company to gain control of 20% of the enriched uranium supply in this country and mining rights worth billions of dollars. And who is it that knew all of that and covered it up? Why, it was Mr. Mueller, Mr. Comey, Mr. McCabe, the assistant FBI director, and the guy who did the final cleanup, a guy named Rod Rosenstein. Yes, the president should demand the appointment of a special prosecutor in that Clinton-related crime. The Clinton Foundation got $145 million from the directors of that Russian-owned, Russian-controlled energy company. Bill got a $500,000 speaking fee. Ladies and gentlemen, Bill and Hillary Clinton are the penicillin-resistant syphilis of the American political system. They would steal a hot stove. We are now at a point where I think the president gave an extraordinary address last night, both in tone and content. He looked and sounded presidential. He has mastered, finally, the idea of the microphone coming to him. He was warm. He was loquacious. He was resolute. But he was conciliatory. It was a positive, upbeat, conciliatory speech. Yes, we could work things out on immigration, but it's the Democrats who aren't serious about making a compromise. With them, it is their way or the highway. They don't want to secure our southern border. They don't want a wall. They don't want to end chain migration, but they demand that the DACA dreamers stay. Well, as the president said, Americans are dreamers too. And then the president could have just cited his incredible accomplishments. 2 million jobs created during his first year as president, a record stock market, Hispanic and African American unemployment at all-time lows, multi-billion-dollar companies like Apple coming back to do business in the United States, repatriating $250 million, agreeing to spend another $350 million. The Ford Motor Company. These list goes on and on. Ladies and gentlemen, America is back and open for business. No longer, going to his signature issues, we will not be the world's patsy in the trade market anymore. The question is not why the Trump administration hasn't made a better trade deal with the UK. The question is, why isn't Theresa May pushing for a better trade deal? Yes, we have a special relationship. Yes, post-Brexit, the UK needs such a relationship, and Donald Trump is open for business. It is extraordinary how much he has accomplished in just 1 year. The Heritage Foundation, the premier conservative think tank in the country, admits in a report last week that on immigration, regulation, and economic reform, Donald Trump has enacted more of their recommendations than Ronald Reagan was able to do in year 1. that is a good statement for those who argued during our primaries that Donald Trump was not a conservative. Now, is everything terrific? No, there is so much more to do. But I was pleased that the president committed himself to bringing back our inner cities. He says he's going to rebuild Detroit as a test case. We must move ahead, but we cannot leave anyone behind. This is the new Republican Party, a Republican Party of working people, a Republican Party of the taxpayer, a party that puts American interests and the interests of individual Americans first. It's driving the mainstream media crazy. And now we face what I believe is our greatest challenge. You see, Donald Trump was only able to win because 2016 marked the end of the monopoly by the 3 television networks and later the 2 cable news networks on our political discourse. Prior to this year, really, prior to the last couple of years, if something wasn't reported by them, well, it didn't happen. They controlled what the American people saw and what they thought. But technological advances, the fact that more than 50% of the voters today are getting their information through the internet, and when you go to the internet, let's say you want to watch CNN on the internet. Well, when you go to the internet, it doesn't take you long to find out that there are much better things to watch, like, I don't know, InfoWars, for example. There are better news sites like Breitbart or the Daily Caller. So this gave rise to a vibrant alternative media, which in turn allowed for the election of Donald Trump. The mainstream media narrative about him and his ideas was not the only narrative in the marketplace, and voters could choose another narrative if they wanted to. So now what's happening is an attempt by the tech left, Twitter, Facebook, Amazon, Google, to put the toothpaste back in the tube. They are censors. They cannot win the war of ideas. They don't want a healthy debate. If they don't agree with you, they just want to shut you up. As some of you may know, I was banned on CNN. I've been on the shows on the network since I was banned. I was banned by MSNBC. I've been on that network too since I was banned. Seems like they just can't stay away. Now I'm banned for life at Twitter. Well, if they're still in business long enough, I'll get the opportunity to sue them. But today, the Guardian newspaper argued that it is a threat to democracy because the BBC invited me on their morning program. No, I think it's a threat to democracy when you seek to censor people and say they have no voice in the marketplace of It is not coincidental that Twitter shut down the president's Twitter feed accidentally for 11 minutes. It is not accidental that they closed down Julian Assange's WikiLeaks Twitter feed accidentally. And now they would like us to believe that some technician spilled a Coca-Cola on the keyboard and it just happened to close Sean Hannity down for a while. These are threats. This is a game, but it's a dangerous game because the market will move people from Twitter. They're not making money with a near monopoly they have today. That's hard to fathom. Facebook has now unveiled new rules that they're going to control the news that you see. They don't want you to choose what you want to see. They're going to decide what you can see because they know better than you do. This has First Amendment implications. This has antitrust implications. This has service contract implications. See you guys in court. Stay tuned. It is important, though, to recognize that this is the central fight that we face. We cannot win the 2018 elections. We cannot win the re-election of this president without a free, unfettered, net-based media. It is a fundamental freedom. Now, you've seen a huge amount of disinformation about net neutrality. Let me explain this to you. It's not complicated. Under Barack Obama, there was net neutrality only for providers, AT&T, Verizon, and Comcast. They had to provide service. They could not deny you service. But there was never any regulation or any requirement for neutrality by content providers. They can defame you, they can ignore you, they can censor you, they can do whatever they want to you. That will no longer be the case under these rules. This is the real net neutrality. The other net neutrality was dictated by Barack Obama and the revolving door of executives from Google. And it sought to limit your choices, limit your free expression, and limit your free speech. So, stay focused on the fight over internet freedom. It is crucial to our election. When I began as a political consultant, people, good men and women, would come to me and say, I want to run for Congress, I want to run for the Senate. I would ask them how much they could raise, because our principal method of communication to voters was broadcast television, which is enormously expensive. The bigger the state you're in, the more expensive it is. In New York or Los Angeles, that's a multi-million-dollar expenditure just to win a House seat. Today, because of the advanced technology of the internet, you can geographically target the voters in the places you need to reach at a much lesser, not insignificant, but much lesser cost. This is a technological revolution. It means better men and women who are not born to wealth, or who cannot tap into special interests to finance their campaign, are viable candidates for public office. It's a sea change. It's a game changer. It's crucial that this unfettered access be continued. Now, I am very, very mindful of the 4 stages of fame. Do you know them? The first one is, who is Roger Stone? The second one is, get me Roger Stone. The third one is, get me a Roger Stone type. And the fourth one is, who is Roger Stone? I intend to make the most of my 15 minutes by continuing to speak out about the Donald Trump that I know. I've known him for 40 years. People say to me, you've got to get him to stop tweeting. Fact, chance. It allows him to communicate directly, unfettered, unfiltered to the American people. It is a powerful tool. That's why they threatened to cut it off. Donald Trump is not a confection. He is not a fabrication. He is not some cookie cutter career politician using polling and focus groups and talking points written by somebody else to tell him what to say. He is also not somebody with a long history in politics, unlike Richard Nixon, who spent 8 years as vice president, or Lyndon Johnson, who spent a term, 3 years as vice president and 10 years as the Senate Majority Leader. They knew where the levers of power were in Washington. They knew the 100 most important jobs. No, we have a president who is a leader, but he is still learning a broken system. He has not yet drained the swamp, but he will drain the swamp. Yeah. I have no doubt whatsoever that the best is yet to come. The president struck a conciliatory tone, and if you looked at the cutaways of the Democrats, they look sour, angry, dejected. Yet so many of my Republican friends are saying, oh, we're going to lose the House in 2018. Don't bet on it. If we run on jobs and prosperity and they run on impeachment, they will lose. Don't ever believe that you can handicap any election 11 months in advance. People say to me, will Trump get reelected? I don't know. He's on a good trajectory to do so, but in politics you can't predict an event that's 3 years away. We don't know what the issues are. We don't know who the Democratic candidate will be. I personally believe, and I predicted in Oxford last night, that Michelle Obama will be the Democratic candidate for president. She is picking up her speaking engagements. She's on with Ellen DeGeneres next week. This is more than a guess on my part. The Obamas control the machinery of the Democratic Party. And make no doubt about it, the only two people on earth happier about Hillary Clinton's defeat than I am are Michelle and Barack Obama. Professional Democrats I know, and I have many friends who are Democrats on the down low, they are delighted that the Clintons are now off stage. They fear the vindictiveness of the Clintons, but they recognize Hillary Clinton's inherent weakness as a candidate. She is not a genuine person. She's not the kindly grandmother she tried to be on TV. She is a short-tempered, mean-spirited, entitled, greedy diva. I believe that this was her inheritance. It was her turn. Well, as Donald Trump has just proved, there are no turns in American politics. You have to work to convince the people. And her epic corruption, and her husband's serial abuse of women, and her role in bullying and intimidating and threatening those women, which was so carefully concealed by the mainstream media in the 80s, was there for all to see. And the epic corruption of the Clinton Foundation, which is not a charity, but a slush fund for grifters, and a vehicle for the facilitation of multi-million-dollar bribes for the purchase of American public policy, needs to be prosecuted by this Justice Department. Would somebody please wait just a second? All right, I have said enough. I'm delighted to be with you. I have another speech later tonight, and I got in very late last night from Oxford. I want to conserve my voice, but I want to take some of your questions. Yes, sir.
What's your thoughts on Steve Bannon?
Yes. Well, sadly, I think that this is an example of hubris. Having worked for and known Donald Trump for almost 40 years, there is no Karl Rove in Trump land. Donald Trump is very much his own man. He marches to his own drummer. No one puts words in his mouth. Nobody puts ideas in his head. To call yourself chief strategist is a death wish to begin with. Donald Trump is Donald Trump's chief strategist. And Donald Trump's agenda, his platform, the issues on which he was elected, immigration, trade, the economy, they were determined a year before Steve Bannon showed up. What surprises me is that anyone would say the things he said, even if he thought them, to a quisling like Michael Wolff. Michael Wolff is not an honest reporter. He is a long history of fabrication. Even in his interviews, he went so far as to say, well, if I didn't get everything right, it wasn't the way I said, that's the way it should be. Well, that's not how this works. Yes?
What about the plan for chemtrails, getting rid of chemtrails and vaccinations?
I couldn't tell you, I know nothing about chemtrails. I have a long piece on vaccinations. Here is the point. The Special Claims Court has reported that we have paid out as taxpayers $3.5 billion to Americans damaged by vaccinations. This year, for the first time, the Special Claims Court says they're not going to publish the outcome of the various lawsuits against branches of the government. I would remind you that the President said he would appoint a commission to study the safety of vaccinations. I really think he needs to do so. That was the point of an article I wrote 10 days ago. I am still hopeful. Yes, sir.
Roger, JFK docs, how satisfied are you that Trump's doing the right thing in getting those released, and when will the CIA be held to account for the murder of John F. Kennedy?
I think the president's moved in the right direction. I think their intention was to release nothing, and he overruled that. They released a lot of information. It was quite valuable. We did learn a lot of things. They did redact a lot of things, meaning they blacked things out. Now, what did we learn? Well, we learned that the Central Intelligence Agency, the FBI, both dissembled about what they knew about Oswald during the Warren Commission investigation and the FBI investigation. Oswald was recruited by the agency. He was trained by them in a language school. The FBI had him on the payroll. They went to great lengths to hide his W-2s and his taxes because he got a paycheck from, yes, the US government. But I'm unsatisfied because they redacted large amounts of the information. But I would point out that the 1992 JFK Documents Act requires them to justify the redactions in writing in the Federal Register. They have not done that. Now, when the documents were released on October 26th, 6 days prior, the Central Intelligence Director told the President that this group of 31,000 documents, which you don't have time to read, Mr. President, but just believe me, they should be sealed for all time. The President said, no, I want to review them. We'll hold them back. But that question's still open, whether we're going to see those. We also learned, by the way, just for the record, yes, Lyndon Johnson was a member of the Ku Klux Klan prior to his service in the U.S. House of Representatives. You know, the great civil rights advocate, the one who put the poison pill into the 1958 Civil Rights Act that said if you were convicted under the act, you would be tried by a state, not federal jury. Well, no jury of white men in Mississippi would convict anyone of violating the rights of a black man. Lyndon Johnson was a lifelong segregationist who defeated every major piece of open housing or voter registration or civil rights legislation. He authored the Southern Manifesto, but he didn't sign it himself because he wanted to run for president in 1960. So there's more to be learned. The President, I think will hold their feet to the fire, both in terms of forcing them to explain why the material they have redacted has been redacted, and it getting to the additional information. One other point I would make, back in July, for reasons that are unknown, even though it was not yet required, they released a small catch of documents that were so redacted that they were completely worthless. It was a test, and there was no public outcry, and I think they were planning to do it again. Their justification, well, we're protecting sources and methods. Sources, you have people still on the payroll 50 years later, okay, name them. That's why this is important. The President said, you can't hold back any information unless it regards someone who is living today. Now they have to prove in the Federal Register that that is what they have done. Or I think we can get unredacted. Methods, yes, absolutely. Just like they were lying and leaking and fabricating on John Kennedy, they've been doing the exact same thing under James Comey to this president. And I don't think they want the president to see their methods. Yes, sir.
Hi, sir. Our president has accomplished a lot in his first year in office, but you know, the way midterm physics works, it tends to favor the opposite party out of power. Do you think the Democrats stand a good chance of taking back the House and Senate or not?
I just think it's too early to say. You have to run on something. What's their program? They can't just run on, we don't like Donald Trump, vote for us. That's not going to work. And I think their plan was to run on impeachment. Mr. Mueller's going to serve up a nothing burger, and they're going to hang their hats on it. And I don't think the American people are going to buy it, but I think that's unfortunately what they would like the election to be about. We should run on jobs and prosperity and economic opportunity for all Americans, and I think we will win the midterm elections.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Do you suspect there's any chance that the Mueller investigation somehow, the relation of the Clinton scandals and the fake Russia scandals are interconnected?
I don't think there's any question whatsoever.
So do you think there's any chance it turns in the direction of the foundation, Uranium One, as they took down Flynn, they took down some people, but maybe that's a fodder.
Well, Uranium One is there.
Because Trump's not firing, Trump's not getting on Sessions, so I'm wondering if that's somehow on purpose to give them space to maybe turn turn that way a little bit.
It's not over until it's over, but the fact that Jeff Sessions would prosecute nobody at the IRS over their violations of the
Exactly.
law, the fact that he would not prosecute anybody over the granting of immunity to Cheryl Mills and Huma Abedin, who destroyed their laptop computers. That's why I say we have a somnambulant attorney general. He's too busy worrying about cracking down on state legalized marijuana that his boss, the president, says he supports. Or asset forfeiture. I don't know if you're familiar with this. That's when you're accused of a crime and they take all your assets before you've been convicted. Can you say unconstitutional? Outrageous. So I don't know what to make of Jeff Sessions. I really don't.
Wouldn't the best way to take down the Clinton Foundation would be not Sessions, who works for Trump, but to have somebody like Mueller do it through an independent investigation?
Well, so an independent counsel, but I think they can back into it through Uranium One. Go back to what I said. Fire Rosenstein, order Sessions to appoint a special counsel for Uranium One. If he refuses, then he too will have to go. But it's very important to recognize that Mr. Rosenstein got the president to sign a document early in his administration changing the line of authority at the Justice Department. So it now goes from the Attorney General to the first assistant, to the second assistant, to the U.S. Attorney in Texas, to the U.S. Attorney in North Carolina, and takes the Solicitor General out of it. Why? Well, it's an insurance plan. That's why. More to be written about this. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I read an article today about how Donald Trump has really helped the Republicans learn how to fight. As a Republican, I've been very frustrated over the years because of the media that we haven't fought enough and we haven't stood up enough and we cow to the media. So what are your thoughts on this combative style, $260 million to $2 billion in spending, and does this come to an end? And can he do things like podcasts and other things through social media to get his message out more than just Twitter?
I still believe that the mandarins at Facebook and Twitter are perfectly capable of cutting off the president's feed. He does not believe so. I'm not sure that he's right. But in terms of tactics, which is really the more important thing, look at Congressman Matt Gaetz. Look at Congressman Trey Gowdy, Ron DeSantis, Jim Jordan. These guys are heroes. Sorry, while the country club Republicans were busy at their cocktail parties, these guys went on the attack. And they have turned the ship because the corruption, the Russian collusion, well, they're right about one thing. There was Russian collusion in our election. They're right about the fact that Putin was in bed with a major party candidate for president. Unfortunately, that candidate was Hillary Clinton. So, in my view, I think those Republicans have gotten the message. I thank you very much for the evening. I'm grateful, very grateful.
Thank you. That was Dr. in-person candidate. I mean, who wants to have more events like this? Yeah. Well, we're all volunteers, so come speak to David or I, or send us an email because we would love to get more people involved. And speaking of volunteers, I must thank Victor, who was working registration, and Sophia, who was taking photos earlier. All volunteers, myself and David included. Thank you so much, and come back and see us again soon in London.
Now,
Thank
some,
you.
Thank you. Some of you, I know, wanted selfies, and I took quite a few, but if you still would like one, and you will line up here, I'll stand in for the thing, we can do this quickly, because I'm going to get to another
Oh, we'll put it on Facebook. No, and she took. Yeah, she takes all. Oh, with her. Perfect. So our volunteer photographer, Sophia, is going to take all of the pictures using your cell phone. So hopefully this will go a little bit quicker.
Nice to see you again. I'm going to the boat dinner now.
Oh yeah, enjoy. I don't know if I'm gonna make it, so we're sort of waiting
Do you
to
have
see
a
how
ticket
this
or
goes.
not?
No, not yet, but I know Ben, so I will.
I'm very good friends with Meg. When he wrote the bloody Facebook event for the boat dinner, his name on my sofa.
Good.
So he was lucky. He was nice enough to give me a huge discount for the, like 60 quid discount for the bloody tickets to the dinner. I like that. Like, the pain me off to get,
I'm Roger.